got a little ahead of ourselves, but imagine a sign. Chances are you thought of something like this. A sign is simply anything that has meaning. Signs operate within systems, and to understand the meaning of a sign or the intended meaning of a sign, it's important you understand the system in which the sign operates. Most of you took a test in order to prove that you were good with the system. Signs are very useful for us because they tell us what to do, where to eat, and because it's an election season, who to vote for, too. So, this orange is a sign. Its color, its texture, the way it smells, the way it tastes, all suggest ideas. There are advertisers that are very interested in you associating or thinking about this orange in terms of, well, let's say Florida. Florida is a sign. It may make you think of palm trees, dolphins, Disney World, or just a state, too. So, let's talk about this sign. This is a commonly accepted sign. There are literally millions of these across the country. It is an indication of a cultural accepted understanding of accommodations being made for certain populations across this country. But signs operate in two ways: denotatively, what they mean, and connotatively, what they suggest. For some individuals, this sign has a negative connotation. It suggests a certain type of helplessness, a lack of ability. We saw this made evident with our president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was, during the Second World War, never really shown in his wheelchair, because it was felt that a president of the United States during a time of war did not need to show weakness. And so over time, this sign, which you see all over in parking places and in buildings, has started to change. And there's been an introduction of a new sign. And you can see the difference here. The figure is leaning forward. There is the suggestion of motion, of ability rather than disability. So the connotation here is different. This sign is also very familiar, but it suggests to some people a kind of binary, in either or proposition. And the connotation there says that you are one of the other two things. You've seen recently in the politics of our time that there's been a change in the sign. You see this on this campus, especially the taking of this sign and melding them together into one for all gendered restroom facilities. This is a sign that's changing. But make no mistake, this is a political statement made by this university and other places who put up that sign. North Carolina, this is a battleground being fought on these kinds of signs. Here's another sign that seems innocuous on the surface, but connotatively ask yourself, what if you're a single mother? What if you're the child of a father, single father? What if you are two women in a committed marriage, a now legal marriage? What does this sign say to you? This sign appeared on a highway on the Mexican border, very busy highway, and was reflective of a reality that some drivers face sometimes. The question you ask is, why was this sign put here and not just a pedestrian crossing sign? If you are a first or second generation Hispanic, how do you view this sign? These signs, to me, are indicative of a change in cultural mores. Probably an advertiser would not have used signs like this 20 years ago. They would not have been accepted. But now, this has almost become commonplace with an interracial couple and gay marriage being used to sell products. So signs can change. They can change over time. So let's talk about one specific sign in its history, the swastika. A powerful sign. Many of you have had an immediate visceral reaction to it, probably having something to do with the Third Reich, Hitler, the horrors of the Holocaust. But, as some of you may know, the swastika is an ancient sign. Almost all cultures, almost all religions have used the swastika at one time or another as part of their belief system or as part of their culture. In this country, the Native American community, many parts of the Native American community integrated this into their weavings. Right here we see a young woman wearing a Native American dress with a swastika. By the way, this is the future Mrs. John F. Kennedy. The Native American people have stopped using this sign. They've stopped weaving this into the rugs that they make. Originally, this was a sign of a positive sign, but now it's become so tainted and so negative that they've decided to stop using the sign completely. But the sign continues to be used in this country. We see it with the reuse of this sign, the repurposing of this sign, if you will, for white supremacist groups, for the Klan, groups like that. But that's also not new or not something that is uniquely tied to the swastika. Because we see the same sort of thing with the Confederate flag. And interestingly enough, not so much as being used to represent the Old South and slavery and all those ideas, but more as a sign of rebellion against perceived overreach of the government. Interestingly, we're starting to see, you look around your local communities and you'll see this flag being used more and more. We're starting to see this sign appearing more and more, but not so much. This is no revolutionary flag sign, right? The "Don't Tread on Me" sign. But this flag is being repurposed by groups that call all across this country. The NRA, the Tea Party have taken the sign and changed it and brought it for their own purposes, mostly to talk about overreach of government, limiting the freedoms. Don't tread on me. Now, what about this changing of the swastika? Does the recoloring of the swastika, the inversion of the swastika, does that in any way change the sign? Or does the power to show through? Interestingly enough, this sign right here, this My Little Pony with a Hitler mustache and a swastika, appeared on the arm of a young woman, and it turned out she was involved with professional wrestling, of all things. And everything was fine until somebody found out that she had a swastika on her arm, and she got fired. That's a powerful sign. Absolutely powerful sign. Probably the swastika is forever tainted by its association with the Third Reich. Don't know in the future, but probably so. So let's move on and talk about ISIS. This by now is a reasonably familiar sign. Loosely translated, it says Allah, God is the only God but God, and Allah is the messenger of God. It is a simple sign, but it carries a great deal of power. But, interestingly enough, it is not hugely unique because it is emblematic of other flags within the region. The Taliban, al-Nusra Front, some of the other groups there. So, to a large extent, ISIS has a bit of an identity problem. And that was never more evident than in this incident, one of the great semiotic incidents, by the way, of our time. For 7 horrifyingly glorious minutes, a reporter in London and a CNN anchor breathlessly discussed the implications of a ISIS flag showing up at a gay rights parade until a producer whispered in someone's ear that actually was not an ISIS flag, but a flag with sexual devices on it. Let's put it that way. So it was, this kind of confusion is emblematic of the problem that ISIS has. So ISIS is one of the great users of signs and semiotics of all time. Now, if Madison Avenue were to run a campaign for ISIS, it might look like something like this, with a very attractive person waving a flag, cheering crowds as they came in. But ISIS has gone a different path, and this is the image that we have of ISIS, usually followed by something truly awful. This, in some ways, is an old thing, but a new thing too, because this is being used to recruit followers. Horrifying, horrifying signs being used to attract people to their cause. As I said, ISIS is very interested in signs. Their flags show up everywhere. And when you have a flag, you're a state. You are something. And so you'll see their flags everywhere. Interestingly enough, ISIS does not like having other signs around. And these two pictures are emblematic of ISIS destroying a mosque, also a statue. The idea is that we will remove the signs from the past and replace them with the signs of present and our signs. But once again, this is nothing new. Many of you will remember the image to the left. This is the Taliban blowing up some 3,000-year-old Buddhist statues. Once again, removing a sign. This middle image here is of a Roman statue that has been altered, its nose whacked off, and a Christian cross carved into it to change the sign. The bottom there is an image of Napoleon's troops who famously blew the nose off of the Sphinx. Show of sign and power. And this image to the right here is of Mao, from the Mao's Cultural Revolution, and literally showing a soldier destroying the signs from the past. So, I said that ISIS is interested in signs. This line right here is a sign. This is a border line between two states, between Syria and Iraq. Very interestingly, one of the first things that ISIS did when it took over this region was to destroy a sand burn marking the border between Syria and Iraq. What they were essentially doing was destroying the sun. They were saying, we're going to eliminate this border. Because what ISIS is interested in is, here's a map of the Middle East. They don't see the Middle East this way. They see the Middle East this way. This is the map that they want to create. They want to change the sign. They want to return to the time of the caliphs and the time of Muhammad, and this is what they see. This is what they want the world to look like. So they are literally wanting to rewrite the map. Speaking of Syria and Iraq, there are a lot of commentators who say right now, this map is out of date. This sign is out of date. Here's what it should look like. That this is the reality, that it's really a Sunni state, a Shiite state. You've got Kurds over here. You've got the Alawites here. Those other places, Syria and Iraq, don't exist anymore. Your maps are out of date. Doesn't mean anything. It's a good question. What do you do with a world where the maps really maybe aren't dead for part anymore? So, when I was a child, I was taught that the world looked like this. I learned this map. I said, this is what my world was. It gave me a sense of security. I was here, they were there, this is my place in the universe. But later on in life, some men came up with an idea that this map was flawed, that it was out of proportion, that things weren't quite right, and that the world should actually kind of look like this. That South America and Africa had been undersized, that Europe, for political or who knows what other reasons, had been recentered toward the middle to give it more prominence. And so I learned that sometimes the maps on the wall can change, sometimes reality can change, sometimes the signs can change. So let me leave you with one last thought. If we live in a universe, 3-dimensional, that's infinite, where concepts like up and down really bear no relation anymore, why doesn't the map look like this? Talk about changing the sign, huh? It's enough to turn your world upside down. Thank you.